Aloha, beautiful beings, and welcome to another episode of the Yoni Havana podcast, where we explore consciousness, looking into how things work in the universe so we can enjoy life more and become more whole. My guest today is serial entrepreneur and longtime podcaster, Mike Bledsoe. In this episode, Mike explains the relationship between spirituality and money, why it's essential to know yourself along with tools on how to do it, the difference between knowing God and believing in God, and much more. If you find value in this conversation, please share it with someone you love. So enjoy this deep and profound conversation with Mike Bledsoe. Aho. Mike Bledsoe, thank you for coming on to the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Yoni. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. You know, to me, it's a full circle going by having you on my show, because our relationship started when I hit you up on Facebook, and eventually I was working for you on your show, doing these show notes and other things for you. So, and I've learned so much from you. You were my number one source, especially that time when I grew so much and started my awakening process of learning about things that I did not know that I did not know. And I loved your attitude and your openness in so many aspects. I mean, we're going to dive into some of those today. And yeah, I just want to give you kudos and much gratitude and respect for everything that you do and you've done so far.
Appreciate that.
You know, I'd like to start by, I know you live in Austin right now, so I'd like to ask you, how do you like Austin versus at a time, you know, when we were working together, you were living in Encinitas, California. How is life right now? How does it, we don't have to compare, but how is it?
Oh, I can compare. Life is good. It's very, very different. Very different. I was living in Encinitas, California, and the way I would describe that town is incredibly feminine. And coming from a background that was hyper masculine, and having served in the military and grew up in construction and men are men and all that, and moving from Tennessee to Encinitas, California, Southern California, to a yoga town. It's like the mecca of yoga in the U.S. Yogananda's place, the Temple of Self-Realization, is right there on the beach in that town. That's how mecca it is. And I was there during a period of time where a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, all descended on that one town at the same time, which is really funny because a lot of them are in Austin now, and that town is not the same town it was when I was living there. That you can't find the parties, you can't find the gatherings and the community in the same way that existed from 2014 to 2018. And that time was really necessary for me. Every day was so easy. The temperature, it's San Diego. The temperature was pretty consistent. There was no challenges in the weather. The beaches were consistently beautiful. The people were beautiful. The grass was always growing and the plants were always green. And it was so beautiful and so easy that it allowed me to relax in ways I'm not sure I could relax in other parts of the world, definitely not inside of a big city. And it was a really great place to experience healing. But, after about 5 years of being there, it was obvious it was time to leave. And I wanted something that had a little more grit, something that would push me a little more. I knew I desired that, but it took me 3 years of wandering the earth before settling down in Austin. And one of the things I'm loving about Austin is it has very much so, I think it has more of a masculine feminine balance. And there's a spiritual community here, and there's a lot of really healthy masculine energy here, which I appreciate. And a lot of my own personal ambition has been coming online because being in a very feminine place, it's like the ambition didn't come natural. It was difficult to work hard. It was easy to relax. And now in Austin, I'm finding there's a better balance of that.
That's beautiful. I'm interested to hear from you. What does healthy masculinity look like in your mind?
Well, we just got to look at what's masculine, what's feminine, and generally, we can think about the feminine is maternal, and the masculine is paternal. And if we think about what our mother was like versus what our father was like, the you strike out at a baseball game, and the mother says, "I still love you just the way you are. You did a great job." But the father says something different. He says, we're going to practice. We're going to batting practice tomorrow. I see a future for you where you can be better and, and then help push somebody to make progress. And so those are like really good examples of that. And an unhealthy maternal pattern might be that uh, somebody is babied and coddled and never allowed to experience any challenge. And an unhealthy masculine or paternal might be saying, "Hey, you're not good enough," and just be driven by pointing out where you suck and allowing like insecurity and things like that to be driving the ambition. And so an example of a healthy paternal or masculine perspective, because I bring up the maternal and paternal because one, it's easy for us to recognize because we can look at our own lives and look at our parents and see this. And we parent ourselves. We get to be our own mother and our own father. And so, a healthy masculine, a healthy paternal figure is going to say, you know, "Hey, I recognize the effort you put in. This is the reality we're dealing with right now, and we're going to go somewhere in the future and paint a picture of the future that's greater than right now, and then put steps in place in order to get there." The other thing that a thing that I really like to think about is maternal comes from the word matter, and paternal comes from the word pattern. And when I think about the universe and all that is, the matter is the stuff, and the pattern is what gives direction to the stuff, right? The energy, the emotions is feminine. It's the purpose, the driving energy in the body. But until the mind, which is masculine, focuses it into a single mission, whether that mission lasts 5 seconds or 5 years or 50 years, it just it can be a bit chaotic.
Makes a lot of sense in my mind. And I started doing men's retreats that are the focus of them is about divine masculinity. It's about creating and helping one find the divinity within them and also be a source of healthy masculinity to all sentient beings. In a romantic relationship, just on the streets as fathers and whatnot, and focusing on masculine men. And we talk about it as the feminine being more chaotic in a creation type of way, not in a negative way, and the masculinity's job is to contain it and give it direction and give it shape, as you were saying. So that really resonated with me
Hmm.
with the matter and pattern. I have never heard of those, but it's another perspective that helps me get a better understanding of how things work, which is something that I'm very interested in, which is the essence of this podcast. So that's really cool. I'm interested to hear you said there is a spiritual community in Austin. What does that look like? How do you feel like you're benefiting from this importance of this? I'd love to get some of the perspective on it.
Yeah, when I say spiritual community, I mean there's a group of people who don't necessarily find themselves ascribing to a specific religion and are really focused on their relationship with themselves and with whatever the version of God that they have. I think a lot of the nature of the community is shaped by the city itself, where the Austin is this really progressive city and right smack dab in the middle of Texas, which is this very conservative state.
Yes.
And so you have this actually see a lot of like progressive values as being very feminine, and the conservative values being very masculine and orderly. Like the conservative values are very much so about creating more order, and then the progressive values are generally more creative. It's a little more chaotic. I think has been fairly obvious the last few years. So being in a city that's smack dab in the middle of yeah, I think it's perfect.
Hmm.
And it's also attracted a lot of entrepreneurship, which anyone who's building a business, that's a masculine endeavor in itself. But also we have a lot of access to nature. People are really good about taking time off. Self-care is a thing. And so there's this really great balance between loving ourselves, but also pushing ourselves. And I think the city really shapes that because it demonstrates that for us. There's skyscrapers now, and there's a river running right through it where I can go float by and smoke a joint, enjoy myself if I want.
It's fun. Something that you said about religion piqued my curiosity. Did you grow up in a religious household? Remind me,
Yeah, yeah, I did.
what was
It
the
was a non-denominational Christian home. I would probably it was like a mix between evangelical and Baptist
okay.
is likely
I, I have to admit, I don't really know
the mix.
the subtleties between all the derivatives of Christianity.
Well, you didn't grow up in the South.
I did not. I live in the South right now.
You do now,
I
yeah.
do. So I'm getting, I'm basking that energy too. And I'm outside Atlanta. I'm about 35 minutes outside of Atlanta, north. And outside of Atlanta too, it's quite red and conservative. And I actually enjoy it a lot. I lived in Miami. I
Mhm.
live in San Francisco. I'm from Tel Aviv. I've been in the meccas of progression in my entire life. In a very secular, I grew up in a very secular household, and now I have so much more appreciation to the beauty and wisdom that I think were instilled in the very early days of religion that perhaps are now not even available in most books, and 99 point who knows how many nines afterwards for whatever reasons. I don't really know. I'm curious, what is your connection to spirituality, to consciousness, God these days?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a student of Ken Wilber's work, and are you familiar with Ken Wilber?
You told me about the theory of everything like a few years ago, and that was also one of the books that I'm like, oh, holy crap! Like, okay, this is a great awakening just by you telling me about that book.
Yeah. So there's a few major concepts that and theories that he uses and basically brings into to create integral theory, but one of them is called an ACOL map, and it's a way of creating a map of everything that is. And it's a it's just four quadrants. It's only four things to remember. The top half of the quadrant is the self. The bottom half of the quadrant is the collective. The left side of the quadrant is the internal, and the right side of the quadrant is the external.
Mhm.
So if we anything in the universe itself that could ever exist will fall into one of these four quadrants. There's an obvious place to place it in one of these four places. And I like using that model for this conversation because when we start talking about everything, it can be difficult to comprehend.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So so the upper left-hand quadrant being the internal self is what's happening psycho-emotionally for somebody, their stories, the archetypes, all these things that live within us. And then the external self, upper right-hand quadrant, is the physical body. And that's the physiology, that's the biomechanics, how you move, these types of things. And then the bottom left-hand quadrant being the internal collective. This is culture, language, rules, your relationships, conversations, the content of the conversations, all of that. And in the bottom right-hand quadrant is environment, and tools and things like that fall under environment. And so we can think about the environment as like, what's the environment you're living in your house, but also the greater environment, the trees outside and the rivers and the oceans. And so I, a lot of times when I coach clients and they start asking me questions about a specific thing, like I had a client come to me 6 months ago and he says, I'm really having, this is a guy who's he's a Czechie, he follows Paul Czech, and he goes, man, he's a business client, and he goes, I'm really struggling with how I think about spirituality and money. Like, and he was saying it as if they were at odds with each other. And I go, okay, so you feel like you have this experience that money and spirituality are at odds with each other. And the truth, I like bringing this up because when he started talking about it, I realized, oh, there's a lot of people out there. Because if you go around the community of people who would qualify themselves as in the healing they're healers. They have a very hard time charging for their services. Same thing happens in coaching, but I would say it's even worse with healers and even psychotherapists. Like, that's a little bit of a different topic, which I'm happy to talk about. But I go, oh, okay, well, let's sit down. And I said, I draw out the 4 quadrants, and he's a student of mine, so he already knows the 4 quadrants. I go, where does money fall in these 4 quadrants? And he says, he puts it in it's the obvious, it's the bottom right-hand corner. It's the external collective. And he's right. Money falls in there. And I said, well, where does spirituality fall in these 4 quadrants? And he goes immediately to the upper left-hand quadrant, the internal self. I go, that's all spirituality is to you? Spirit lives in one place in this quadrant. Well, what is God? Great Spirit. What is that? Well, he goes, well, it's everything. Well, I go, well, then we have to draw a circle around these 4 quadrants and call that God and Spirit. And the light bulb went off, and he realized that money was a part of God.
Beautiful.
And the fact that he was struggling to be at odds with it was he was creating a separation between God and money in his own mind. And so that is a very cognitive explanation of how I work on my relationship with God, reminding myself in every moment that every single thing, person, item, whatever it is I am constantly immersed in God at all times. And any time that I forget that that's the thing that creates separation between myself and God. And so I had a friend from my childhood who, grew up to be a minister. And so we grew up in the same church, and he goes on to be a minister. I go on to go in the Navy and become a hellraiser. And then I get out of the Navy and go into fitness and entrepreneurship. And I also was deep in the scientific world. And in the scientific world, it was like you didn't even want to admit that you believed in God there because you were immediately thought to be an idiot. And so even before that, I'd really question. When I was in the Navy, I was questioning. I saw other guys going to a chaplain and the chapel in church and stuff like that, and I just lost all interest in it. And I wouldn't say that I fully could admit that I was atheist, but I definitely did not want to think about God at all. I did not want to have that experience. I didn't want to think about it. It felt like a waste of time. But the truth was, it bothered me. Like, sat way back. I kept it stuffed away, and it bothered me. So a number of years after I got out of the Navy, started my business. I found psychedelic mushrooms, and which really shifted my perspective. But I wouldn't have there. It was the beginning of an awakening that I would later recognize was very spiritual in nature, but at the time felt very cognitive. I was also using a heady type of mushroom. Golden teachers tend to be very philosophical and not as much body. And that led me to a couple years later going to do ayahuasca in Peru. And that was this big spiritual awakening where I got to have the experience and relive and see the experiences early in my life where I had created that separation between what God was and what God wasn't, and all the meaning that I had inherited from the church and from my parents about what it was. And I got to start a new conversation with myself and a new relationship with God. And so going back to my friend who's a minister, and it was maybe 2 years ago, he calls me up. He goes, "Man, I just got to talk to you about something. It's been really on my heart." I go, "Oh, okay. Well, what's up?" And I knew what he was gonna why he I could tell from the tone. I could read his mind because I'm psychic. No, I'm not psychic. I mean, we're all psychic to a degree, but whatever. He he was like, "Yeah, I'm just worried about your relationship with God," and like the phone call was like an attempt to help save my soul. And he goes, "Do you even believe in God?" And I said, "No, I don't believe in God. I know God. I don't have to believe in God."
That's what I'm talking about.
Like, yeah, because when I went and did ayahuasca, I had the experience of being immersed in God's presence,
Absolutely.
and people don't. It's ever since then, I really tried to be very careful about the things I believe. I try to believe things that are useful, but the things that are truly important, I must know them. I need to go there. That's a bit about my relationship to God. It's not the easiest way to go. I am sometimes jealous of people who are religious because I see religion as a great way to create spiritual order without having to think too much about it or have to work on your relationship to God specifically. You just listen to what someone else is. I'm listening to someone who's working on their relationship with God to tell me the things they found out so I can live a good life and have more order in my, because that's what we want. Religion is really about creating more order.
Mm.
And so, yes, I sometimes get jealous. I was like, man, what if I just went all into a religion? I could outsource my relationship to God, and then that might even allow me to be more successful in my business and have more time with family and all these things. So I see the value in it, but I truly don't believe that most people have they're not resourced well enough, or maybe not have the desire to go down the path of creating their own order and structure that's informed by their relationship to God instead of needing to adopt other people's.
Ooh, so a lot of good stuff. Um, so many things that came to mind. The one thing that I want to follow up on before I forget it, it's your desire to outsource your relationship to God in that exploration of that relationship, perhaps. Where do you think this is coming from? Do you feel like you're overwhelmed, tired? I think when one opens the door, let's say with ayahuasca, and being immersed in that God's presence, which I think is within us, and as you said, it's all encompassing. It's everything. And understanding my experience was, I understood that I am God. God is part of me. There's a greater God. There's a greater energy that I'm a part of, like a leaf on a giant tree. But
Hmm.
I don't feel encumbered, I will say, by this relationship. I'm curious where that desire comes from. And some people say ignorance is bliss, but in my opinion, once one opens the door, it's just, you can't go back. It doesn't go both ways. It only goes one way.
Yeah, I think my heart is lighter for sure. Those thoughts come to mind because I have friends that have had deep psychedelic experiences and sat with ayahuasca who have gone into Christianity, definitely with a new frame. They're the weirdos in church, and I love being in text message threads with them and stuff because they're taking all this knowing from these experiences and then applying it to the religion, which is really cool. But I see people who do that, and I see that they are able to give up some of the uncertainty,
Mm. Uncertain.
and so
What kind of uncertainty are we talking about?
like it's like my experience is I'm constantly adjusting to what's happening in my life based on my own internal compass. And so there's this necessity to maintain a certain level of awareness at all times in order to keep that compass, right? But when I see somebody who adopts a religious view and they go, "Well, I just don't do these things," and the gray areas where there can be room for mistakes get completely
Mm,
diminished. And so it's like there's relief in that order.
I see. I will say what I'm reading is, and then I'm just going to compare it to the Matrix. Part of your awakened self perhaps wants to go to sleep for a bit because continuing to unfold and being guided by the divine and realizing that some of, let's say, your old ways are not working anymore, it can be tiring. You're like, all right, I constantly gotta keep unfolding, which in my opinion too, uh, it's a way of undoing karma. Because if one comes to a realization, has the awareness that the way that they're operating doesn't work, it's not bringing them, they don't feel whole and joy from their actions and decisions and perhaps their thought patterns, and realizing like, oh, I want to shift this a little bit to become more whole and more joyful. That seems to me like they're undoing karma. They're doing something very beneficial for their soul, which in my opinion they'll keep coming back to this in this lifetime and future lifetimes until this is resolved. I was just talking to my friend Matt, whom you know, and I told him that we're getting on the mic earlier, and he's like, "Oh, tell Mike you got to come to bed and hang out." Anyways, I was just telling him because he was going through a challenge, and I told him you're gonna keep revisiting this challenge until you change your perception about this and start treating your relationship with this challenge differently. I told him 100% it's gonna come out from all places, and you may get a relief and like cruise for a bit, but it's gonna come at you again. It's just gonna keep coming because this is what I see our desire to be here in this reality is to learn and to experience. Experience with the senses and learn. And I don't really see much more to be doing here. And that to me that's relieving. Perhaps to somebody else, "Oh, I really wish there was some deeper meaning to this, and I really want to be serious about XYZ. This is so important, and I think it's things are as important, not important equally. And when they feel important, it's duality. That's when the separation comes, and that's okay to play that role. That's how I see it. To me, it's very relieving. I'm just trying to flow. Be a fish in the ocean. It's just taking me, and I'm taking turns as they are, as I'm being guided to take these turns.
Well, I think I like what you're saying there with the importance because that's really what Buddha was talking about in regard to attachment.
Mm,
It's to just replace attachment with importance, and the message becomes more westernized. It's a easier translation. So
mhm.
yeah, I like trying to make things unimportant.
What do you feel is important in your life at the moment to you?
My relationship with my fiancée is important. I'm finding more importance again in I'm readdressing achievement. So the at the end of 2017, early 2018, I went through a lot of emotional healing. And I during that time I realized that so much of what was driving almost everything that was driving my ambition was just insecurity.
Mm.
And I went through a series of events and retreats and whatnot where I really let go of the majority of the insecurity that was driving me. And I was left with very little ambition up until say until the last 2 years. So there's like 3 years of coasting. And that 3 years of coasting was really great. And then after 3 years of coasting, I was tired of it. I go, wow, I am really tired of coasting. I'm maintaining, so on and so forth, but I'm not really getting after it. My goals are small and easily achievable. And about 2 years ago, one of the reasons I moved to Austin is because I was like, oh, I want to get back on, I want to get back on this ambition train. And mainly because I'm sick of coasting, not necessarily because there was no mission in mind. I did realize that I want to get married and I do want to have kids and I want to be able to provide a really solid life for them. And ambition is very useful in those cases. But yeah, I've spent 2 years where I really, before it was like, yeah, I'm just here to learn and this and that, but I'm not creating any clear goals for myself. And the last 2 years has been readjusting my focus, following that inner compass and becoming ambitious again, but not from a place of comparing myself to other people. And, before it was like, I want to build $100 million company and this and that. And it was mainly because I was looking around what other people were accomplishing and I wanted the status of that.
Mhm.
And now it's a much more inherent driver that's come online, and it's a new type of engine and fuel has been installed, and I'm learning how to ride this new machine.
Do you still have a 40-year goal?
40-year goal. Yeah.
Is it the same from a few years ago?
Oh yeah.
Can you share it?
Yeah. 10,000 interviews.
How many in the bank?
I am not even 100% sure.
Rough number.
I'm over 1,000 at this point.
Over 1,000. So 9,000 to go. Then let's say that the 40 year starts now. We're looking at
I'm just gonna wait till by the time I'm there, I'll be able to ask AI how many interviews I did, and it'll just spit it out.
okay. Do you think do you think this is your life's mission to be sharing inspiration via interviews and that's why this is your 40-year goal?
I set that goal just to set a goal.
Okay.
Now, I was challenged to set a goal, so I said, "Well, I enjoy interviewing people, and I know if I interview people, if I do 10,000 interviews over the next 50 years, then good shit'll happen." So it's kind of like I'll just work out.
Okay.
I work out so I can still wipe my ass when I'm 100.
I see. So this is for the joy of experience of being in your body and whatnot. Do you think do you have any clarity on your life's mission, or even if you think there's something like this?
Yeah, well, my purpose is really to use my charisma and creativity in order to guide and inspire others to uniquely express their gifts. And so, I'll call that like a purpose statement because it's incredibly accurate and vague at the same time. That is a purpose that could be applied to a lot of different missions. And so, a mission being a much more concrete objective that we're going to accomplish. And so, conducting interviews falls underneath that purpose. And I know that there's other missions for me to accomplish as well.
Are you mainly focused on the strong coach business at the moment?
I am, well, the strong coach business as it was 6 months ago is not what it is today. So I have two main types of work that I'm doing right now. One is I only consult coaches who have more than 100,000 followers. I partner with these influencers in order to help them build out their businesses, and I get a lot of one-on-one time where I get to guide them very intensely, and that's incredibly satisfying. So I have a handful of those clients. One of those clients being my fiancée. She runs Altered Psychedelic Practitioners, where she takes psychedelic practitioners, whether they're licensed therapists or they're healers from South America or they're coaches or just sitters or whatever it is, and puts them in the same room for 3 months at a time. So 2 hours every 2 weeks for 3 months, and everyone's exchanging their gifts, helping solve their clients' problems with each other. There might be a psychiatrist in the room with somebody who is a mushroom trained curandero from Mexico or something like that. The mission of that company, which I'm really excited about and I'm excited to be a part of, is to psychedelics are coming down the pipe for FDA approval. And I I do not like, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of these companies are trying to change compounds like psilocybin compounds just slightly so they can patent them. So the thing that becomes legal can be legal, and the thing that's been around for a millennia or longer remains illegal. And then they're also trying to patent very specific therapies to go alongside these things. We actually have inside information on what these therapies are like, and they're fucking shit is what they are.
Damn.
They're like low level therapy it's not that useful. So what's going to be, and this will be the first time in history the FDA has been involved in regulating therapy, because they've only regulated food and drugs up until this point. So they're wanting to expand, and they do such a good job at everything else. So why would we be concerned? So what we're witnessing is the government is getting comfortable with the idea of psychedelics because they see a way to control it. And that's dangerous. There's profit, but there's also making sure that people don't wake up too much. Like, if we can always keep psychedelics in the realm of healing and not actually get people to the point where they're experiencing their own sovereignty, because individual sovereignty, there's no bigger threat to a national sovereign, like a sovereign nation, than a sovereign individual. That's the most dangerous thing. So the most
Dangerous
dangerous,
to the powers that be, you mean? Not necessarily
that's right.
to the rest of the population.
Yeah, it's the best thing for the rest of the population. Yeah. It's very dangerous to people who love centralized power.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is my belief, there's one of these things that I believe, I don't know for certain, is that the only reason this is getting anywhere is because they're able to control the experience through approving only specific therapies. So the goal of APP, Altered Psychedelic Practitioners, is to beat the FDA to the finish line.
Mm.
So by the time they come out and say, "Oh, we're so great, we're going to tell you which therapies you can use and which drugs or whatever," we've already taken up the majority of the psychotherapists, the psychologists,
Mm-hmm.
and the coaches, and all these people who would normally just fall underneath this siloed group of practitioners who have no introduction. Even they don't even know what energy means. They don't know what a purge is. They don't know anything about what has been passed down for millennia with psychedelic facilitators and healers. They don't know shit. They've got a degree, they've got some hours conducting therapy from a very cognitive perspective primarily. They don't know shit when it comes to this stuff. And so there's a lot of people who have involved themselves in trying to shape policy, and I don't think that's the right answer, because you're really just arguing about who gets to make the rules instead of saying nobody should be making the rules. Like, this should all be voluntary. Everyone has the right to explore their own consciousness in whatever way they choose.
It's,
So I'm excited about that project
it's beautiful.
because we're doing it from the ground up. Fuck policy. What we'll do is we're going to get in with the facilitators. By the time the FDA lays out their rules, we will have already expanded the psychotherapists and psychiatrists who are interested in this stuff. We will have already expanded their minds and gotten them on board.
Wow. That's really cool. It's powerful. That's quite a mission. Salute to your fiance and you and everybody else is involved in this mission. I'm in great support of that. And please let me know if there's any other way that I can support that. Is there a website we can link into in this show?
You just go to www.alteredpractitioners.com.
Are those trainings only in Austin? Are they nationwide? Are they online?
Nope. Online.
Online.
So we have a local
Mhm.
group, but we also have online groups. So it's a global organization.
That's amazing. As you were talking about it, I definitely, so I salute the mission, but I think regardless of how things happen, and yes, if you don't beat the FDA there, it will slow down the process. But even if people are getting the shitty, the shitty healing services, they still at least heal to the point that perhaps they will want to do something that is on paper
It's better than nothing.
illegal, and then perhaps awaken at some point. One of my main missions is to help people awaken, if not the mission, part of this podcast. So, and I think, as you said, it's very important that a person becomes sovereign, and eventually Earth itself becomes sovereign. I know it's quite a big mission, and however things go and whatever timeline they go, there's only so much energy and impact that people can make. But I think it's all about the practice of showing up and doing what we are guided to do and the best that we can. So,
yeah. I just get a little nervous because under like psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers, and then if you put a practitioner in there that reinforces disempowering narratives while someone's in a very neuroplastic state, and the truth is I hear a surprisingly amount of disempowering
journeys,
not journeys, but things happening in therapy.
Really? Well, it makes sense. Yeah, it's
there because there's a concept in therapy called you want to validate the person's experience so that you can then work with that and make it more malleable. But from what I've witnessed so far, you find somebody who's in a victim mentality, and then they spend way too much time validating the fact that they're a victim and never get beyond that.
Wow. So perhaps even strengthening the idea that they're a victim and things are happening to them. No sovereignty at all, actually. Zero sovereignty at that point.
Right. So you mix that with MDMA, psilocybin, whatever it is.
Heightened state, heightened experience.
And you're only giving a compound that's almost like psilocybin, but not quite. So it doesn't have the same spirit to it.
What a fucked up situation. But that's part of the work, and I will get back to the idea that we're all in this God energy. We're all consciousness. So it's we're playing games with ourselves of how challenging can we make this hero's journey for all of us. That's the way I see it. I mean,
I blame my childhood self.
What do you mean by that?
I was afraid of getting bored when I was a kid. I was afraid that I was going to get bored when I got older. Far from it. Signed up for a great adventure.
It's interesting you say that. I don't think I was afraid of getting bored. I was pissed that I'm getting bored. And I think this is a lot of why people are on social media, why people are constantly consuming entertainment, which the word itself equals to withholding the mind. They're like, I don't really like the silence or whatever other thoughts that fly through my mind and whatnot, the sensations in my body, the past memories of being a jerk or whatnot. And then please, can somebody withhold my mind with an interesting narrative they came up with? So that's it's just being.
I love that you broke that down.
Look, part of the story is I got off all social media because I realized that with as much awareness and practice that I put into meditation and psychedelics and everything else, I can still get sucked into rabbit holes about things that perhaps have some value for me, but not at that time. And usually they take away from what I want to do, what I'm guided to do at a certain time. So I got off all social media. I only got into Telegram, which doesn't have a feed. It has channels, and I can see it's all muted, like the notifications. So I can like go into a channel if I choose to like look what's into spirituality, sovereignty, etc. And then for this podcast, I've created a new Instagram account, and I have a strategy on it. And I got off it because this is part of the message that I want to send, is that spending time there, it's not beneficial. And what I'm doing is, since people are there, I will meet them there, but I'm going to ask their attention to come and spend more presence and be more engaged with one thing. And I think I learned that doing things simultaneously and just succumbing and rolling with being fed information and content is not very beneficial. It usually does not lead to contentment and to joy. It really doesn't. And people will tell me, but I found out about this. Like, yes, there are benefits, 100%. This is not black and white, which I wanted the life to be back when I was younger. Black and white, no God. This is the way it is. We're Jews. They fucked us in the Holocaust. Why would anybody do that? This is one, YOLO, baby. YOLO, TNA, Miami. That was my life. That was my life. It was a very egotistical life that was very much influenced by the energies of lower vibrations. And there's nothing wrong with it. This is also part of God. God also enjoys anger. It enjoys lust. It enjoys all of those things. It turns out after time that it enjoys peace, love, and enlightenment more than those. It takes some time to go through the emotions, but there is no harm in doing those things, perhaps a little bit subjectively.
Short term, yeah.
And there's a lot of joy. I mean, I'm thinking about those times. There are no regrets. There are no regrets of a lot of things that happen. I think they happen as they should. Yeah, you were talking about mistakes earlier. I'm like, whatever. Mistakes. Like, I've probably done them in, like, I don't know, 70,000 lives on this planet alone. Who knows? I'm really excited about this mission. I want to look into this more deeply and spread the word. A lot of the work that we're doing in the men's retreat is with plant medicine. So it's an arc of experiences over 4 days, 4 nights. And the results that we've been getting are mind-blowing. This whole thing came up organically about 2.5 years ago. Me and my partner, who is an expanded states guide based in Marin County in California, goes to the Center of Consciousness Medicine, School of Consciousness Medicine, whatever that is called.
I'm familiar. Yeah.
So legit. And I mean, when we're talking about it, I'm like hoping things will unfold as they unfold. And I think it's great that people are putting effort and intentionality into improving people's lives. Reading the map, reading the powers that be.
Yeah. Anyone who's facilitating medicine work would benefit greatly from being in the group because you're really mixing it up with it's continuing education on steroids. It's a mastermind for practitioners. It's
amazing.
Quarterly we have an elder coming, a true elder, come in and teach. Quarterly we have a legal team come in and give us updates on what's happening on the legal side, how to stay protected, all those types of things. So there's beyond the grander mission of what are we accomplishing in the world for the individual practitioner, the incredible amount of value. And we looked around and nobody is doing this.
Wow.
There are some loose containers, but there's not any highly structured containers that like what we created.
As someone who's great at setting mission, vision, plans long term, does this organization have a plan for 3 years from now, 5 years from now of expanding this globally?
We would like to have 1,000 people in it in 1 year.
Okay.
In 5 years, 10,000.
Beautiful. Oh, it's amazing. I mean, the ripple effects of this, of having these practitioners awakened and equipped with tool set to help keep awakening people, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of these people are in other associations that are impacting policy, and there it's an interesting web of people that are in the room. So it's very exciting.
On a personal level, how is your relationship with your fiance? How long have you been together? I forget. And how do
Oh
you
man.
describe this relationship?
We've
I, I
I said, "Oh
okay,
man," because our anniversary is in 2.5 weeks.
that's great. I want
Um,
to give a little preface to this question. If I may, you're divorced, and most of the men that I work with are divorced, and
mhm.
and some of them are still single, but a lot of them are in other relationships that are very successful, and successful in a way that there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of openness, there's a lot of ease. So I'm interested to hear from you how this one is going, and yeah, this perspective on it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I She is somebody I can really lean into and get support from, and really, and she can do the same thing with me. Yeah, I feel very matched on a intellectual level and on a philosophical level, and physically too. She's a very capable athlete on top of that, and I really just enjoy spending time with her. It does not get old. It's so good. I'm looking forward to giving her some babies and building a family with her. And yeah, we're in the process right now. We've been meeting in the mornings, and we're in a process of really planning out in incredible detail our future and what we're creating together. So it's enjoyable. I'm not dreading that one bit. I think there's been times in the past where I've been like, okay, I gotta go do this exercise. It's like, oh, I can't wait. Like, when do you have a break again so we can go through some of our process for planning what's happening next.
Can you share some of those plans, processes?
Well, this morning we spent time focused on things that we're complaining about that we could take more responsibility for. Just going back and forth and coaching each other a bit. Where I go, yeah, this is where I'm having trouble, and then she just asks me some questions, and I answer them, and I get to a place of what a realization of what it is that I can do about the situation, and we just go back and forth. We sit down every 6 months and write out our 10-year vision together. What our home looks like, what the family looks like, where we're living, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we just do different programs at different times. So it's good to have like a someone on the outside saying, "Hey, do these set of exercises together right now."
Would you mind sharing where do you see the family in 10 years in terms of location, kids?
Yeah, 2 kids and a house in the city in Austin, a house in the mountains of Flagstaff, and a house near the beach in Mexico.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Do you like plan in detail, like what months of the year are you spending in each house?
Oh yeah.
That's so
Oh
cool.
yeah.
Are you avoiding the cold weather or no?
Well, it doesn't get that cold in Austin. I mean, it freezes and everything, but not it's not terrible. But yeah, I'm gonna avoid the cold, as cold as it gets in Texas. Yeah, we're gonna go to Mexico. So in the winters, we'll actually do like half Mexico, half Flagstaff. So
Where's Flagstaff?
uh, it's in Arizona. It's in the mountains. That's 7,500 feet.
Mhm.
It snows. You get snow skiing board through the winter. It's a lot like Tahoe, but a little less extreme in regard to the weather.
Mm.
If you're familiar with Tahoe,
I
but
I am.
yeah, so it's similar because it's at the same elevation, but it's not quite as cold in the winter, but because it's a little bit further south. But yeah, you got the Grand Canyon right there and everything. But yeah, the idea is spend a couple of weeks, 2 or 3, 4 weeks in Mexico, spend a couple of weeks in Flagstaff skiing in the winter, then go back to the warmth. So just come in to enjoy this winter sports and then get out.
So cool. That's
And then
awesome.
be there in the summer in Flagstaff because there's tons of outdoor activities to do in the mountains, and the water and the lakes, and super moderate weather. But spring and fall in Austin.
It's beautiful. Are you planning to get married in Austin?
We're looking at Medellin, Colombia for the wedding.
Beautiful. Remind me, is your future wife from California?
She is. She's from the Bay.
Is there a family in the Bay?
Yeah.
Your family is in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Do you plan, I'm just curious, I want to help people if they're thinking about doing this exercise, think about it in this way. Are you planning some of your life in a way of spending time with family in those locations, spaces?
No, but the door's always open for them to come visit.
That's
The
cool.
Everybody in I come from a very independent family. There's 5 of us kids, but everybody is super independent, and trying to get one of the other families to participate in what you want to do is incredibly difficult.
I
So,
see.
yeah.
How close are you with your siblings?
That's a hard one to answer. I don't know. Like, compared to what?
The way
Like, they're as close as I
the
am.
way you feel about it. You feel close, the relationship is open, we're talking.
I feel closer to my family than I ever have before.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I really resented my siblings up until 5 years ago.
Why is that? Why was that?
Oh, I'm the oldest of 5, and every time another one of them were born, there was, less food on the table for me, less money to devote to me being able to play the sports I wanna play. Just less for me.
Yeah.
I was a selfish bastard.
Well, that's that's a very natural progression. We had our second kid about 9 months ago, and it's just as normal as it is that a child has a world. It's them and their two parents. And now what is this one doing here? Um,
Right.
and it takes a lot of time, I think, and maturity to like, okay, we're gonna have to share the attention. We're going to have to share resources, like, and you don't want to. Uh, and I
Yeah.
think that's just a healthy way of being. It's not that it's unkind. It's just different over time to learn. Having the second kid prompted me to get into a parenting book because it presented new challenges that I did not know how to handle. And actually, my wife and I handled them so poorly on the last day of 2022 that we're like, look, we're gonna have to study this. What we're doing here, which is what our parents did, is not only not working, it's damaging. You know, it was just like we're like looking at this, and we were the ones who were suffering even more than our kid because we were creating
Yeah.
this separation and sadness within us. So I mean, I'll throw the name of the book. It's called The Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy. It really opened my eyes, and I learned a ton about relationships in general, but about relationships with kids that really helped me become a better father, which is one of my main missions. That's really cool. Let me ask you this question: Is Are you in a place, or do you have the intention that when you work in a business such as the Strong Coach, that it will eventually run on its own, and you guided a bunch of people to run it, and that's that? How do you operate in that way? Because I love the way you run
I
businesses.
used to I used to I used to think like that, but I think my personality there's different personalities in entrepreneurship and in business. And my personality is that my presence brings a lot of value, whereas some personalities are much more they're the type of personalities who are into building systems, and it's almost better if they're not there.
Mhm.
So the
Does that mean they're behind the scenes? What do you mean by they're not there?
yeah, they're behind the scenes, or they build the systems and put somebody in place that can run it. I tend to create businesses where if I leave the front facing of the business, that's that's the majority of the value that the I'm not like I create I'm I think in systems and big picture, but as far as granular detail oriented, I'm gonna get in there and do it. Not gonna happen. And I found that I can be way more profitable if I just keep the team small and just do what I like to do instead of trying to build something I can sell at some point.
Hmm. Very cool. Well, what you said earlier about being charismatic and creative and having the energy and gifts to inspire and help people express their gifts, I think it's not replaceable. I think, as you said, other things perhaps can run, and time will be focused on working on your gifts. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm the product in much of what I do.
Mhm.
So, I had a realization a couple years ago that I was like, "Wow, this really like, I thought about my personality in business as something that sucks because I can't that means I can't stop. It's like, even if I love what I do, like, if I stop, then my wealth starts to diminish because I was in the frame of mind of, I'm gonna build wealth by building companies I can sell.
Mhm.
But every time I exit a company, it's not like, if I start exiting, the value starts to diminish immediately, and "Oh, I need to build wealth in a different way," and so I discovered real estate investing, and I go, "Oh, so I see my primary business drives income, and my wealth is built in incredibly stable real estate that produces revenue on top of it, increasing in value over time, it's generating revenue." So, it working from that strategy, I also like to keep things really simple. So building a business that's got a lot of moving parts, not interesting to me. Like, I doubt you'll ever see me sell a physical product. But the idea is maximize how much income I can generate by being me and showing up to coach and to guide people and all that, and then put put all that into real estate. And I see a clear 5 to 10 year, um, 5 or 10 more years till all my passive income surpasses my lifestyle costs.
What do you plan to do then?
I have no idea. I figure that once I get there, then I'll, the question always is like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? Which is a fun experiment to run, but to pretend like you actually know what you would do if you couldn't fail, or if you didn't need to make money doing it, you don't know until you're actually in that position.
That's a good answer.
So I want to put myself in that position, and then I'll
Mm.
know.
But if somebody works on detailed long term plans, there's no little bit of idea of saying, like, if, as you said, if all the lifestyle and the houses and everything is covered now, and I'm spending this time
Mhm.
over here with the kids, perhaps you're saying, I'm working 1 hour a day, and I'm training with my wife. We're doing some trainings for other people online, a couple hours per week. I'm just hanging out with my kids. They're homeschooled, whatever that is. Are there any of those intentions, ideas for
Oh
a
yeah.
completely covered lifestyle?
Oh yeah. Yeah. My goal is for work to be completely optional. So the only work I would be taking on would be very, very purpose driven. It would be energizing, and the kids, homeschooling the kids would be my 100% priority, and involving them in business, I think, is really important. So I got some value from my dad. He involved me in his business at a young age, and I see benefits in that. But yeah, I want to be optional. I want to be able to disappear for a month and take my kids to Europe to learn about history by visiting the cathedrals and castles and shit, than trying to learn it out of a book or on a video online. Who knows what it'll be by the time I have kids?
Pl-
Other people just be plugging their kids into something.
Are you planning to have kids in the next few years?
Yeah, next 2 years.
It's awesome. Well, it's gonna be exciting. I love how you have the intention and also the experience of you experiencing things for yourself rather than getting another source of telling, like, hey, here's how it works, here's how this is, whether it's the minister with ayahuasca and God, and or just going to places to feel them, to feel the energy. And I think it's really beneficial and I'm going to use the word important for understanding how things work rather than believing. I think belief is one of the biggest problems that we as society have. There's a podcast out there, and you can look it up, people, that says belief is the enemy of knowing. This is the people that want to look into the esoteric knowledge. And I think belief And there's a big difference between belief and faith that I'm learning really the subtleties of that. And beliefs really are kind of they're just they're ideas. They're ideas and they're not not much more than a theory. That a strong attachment to a theory or an idea that somebody else has instilled in us. So I'd like to just put it out there for the audience who have perhaps have all kinds of beliefs they're attached to.
I got a little trick for that, and that is replace the word belief or believe or think or feel like, all those words, replace them with imagine
Mm.
and
Nice.
play with that.
I want to get into one more topic here. And when we talk about sovereignty and society, I don't know if it was a conversation or I read this in one of your, posts or whatnot. What's your take on a healthy society in terms of centralization, government, freedom? If you thought about it, because I think I remember something from you. I don't know how long ago that was.
I've definitely thought about it. I mean, ultimately, the goal is that everybody knows themselves and they understand the absolute morality that exists in this world, which is, I will do you no harm. And as long as people don't know themselves, they will look outside of themselves for their authority. In an ideal world, people know themselves, and the word sovereign, we break down the etymology of that. It basically means the ruler above or above ruler. And as long as somebody is ruling somebody else, that's an immoral action. And so if I come and say, Yoni, you must behave a certain way or else I'm going to put these cuffs on you and put you in a box. And if you resist that, I'll have to kill you. That doesn't sound cool. And if I get 2 or 3 people to come agree with me and then come to you, it doesn't make it any more right. If I get 100 people, it doesn't make it any more right. And so the only reason that exists is because the majority of the population don't know themselves and the mob is dangerous. And the goal is, how do we introduce everybody to themselves and get them connected to themselves and see the God in themselves and tap into that moral compass that we all have inside of us. And until that's accomplished, we will have people who are very happy. 4% of the population are psychopaths, and they all gravitate towards power.
What's the percent?
4%.
4%.
4%. This has been regularly measured over the last, I want to say it's been 60, 70 years of research. So about 4%. And they all gravitate towards power. The dumb ones end up in prison. The brilliant ones are CEOs of large corporations and politicians. And so as long as we want to give power outside of ourselves, those people will have the power over the population and they're simply dangerous. They're not my rulers, but I also know better, and I don't want to get clubbed over the head. So we got to watch ourselves and help people wake up. So ideally, everything would be voluntary. And just because you're born on one side of a line or another shouldn't dictate that you have to forfeit a third of your income just because you happen to, even if you leave the country in the US, you're still going to pay those taxes.
So
Like,
I hear.
they own you. They own you. Right?
Yeah.
We're their bitch. And that's fucking wrong. And they own your labor, or at least they make you believe they do. There's ways around it for sure. But everybody believes the lie. And so, yeah, I see a world where it's all voluntary and things are heavily decentralized. and people move to geographical locations that align with their values. And I think that technology is emerging that allows us to do that while maintaining widespread trade, because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, is the amount of order that's brought by the government. The number one thing it's supposed to do is protect your property. And number two is make it safe to conduct trade.
Mm.
And it's done the trade thing really well. And it's done to protect your property poorly because it actually steals from you themselves. So obviously they're not doing that very well. And so, yeah, I see a world where you get to choose where you live geographically with ease, abide by those rules that you voluntarily said, hey, I'm going to be a part of this and commit myself to this. So I think the more decentralized we become, the more aligned with our values we get to live with ease.
Very cool. To touch on the knowing oneself, do you think the main avenues would be through psychedelic therapy? What are some other ways you recommend people can already take action today or in the next month, let's say, to start knowing themselves?
You get to understand, you get to learn, you get to know that no individual on this planet is greater than anybody else. And to know that you are sovereign is to recognize your own royalty. Your connection with God is just as important as anyone else's connection with God. And that's the only authority in your life. And that's the ultimate authority. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is a liar. And so sitting with what I just said is helpful. Holding that frame while using psychedelics is very helpful. This is why psychedelics, you know, they went after them in the 60s, is because enough people were doing it and there were enough voices that were going, hey, by the way, while we're in this really neuroplastic state, have you thought about this? And like, holy shit, it's actually total bullshit. And there was anti-war movement. And how do we arrest these people? How do we stop this anti-war movement? Oh, well, they're all using these psychedelics. We make those illegal, we'll have an excuse to arrest them. And so I think that the hyper focus of psychedelics for the potential for healing is telling only a part of the story. But once you get through that healing and you get into that expansion of consciousness and you find yourself in that oneness and recognizing who you are, now you're your own ruler. You rule you.
That's huge. I want to follow up on this idea with a few other action items to recommend to the audience. And one of them I was introduced to through you, which is language. There's a course from Mark England, if I'm not mistaken, called Core Language Upgrade. I think it's vocabulary.org. If it still exists.
They've shifted the whole brand.
Mm-hmm.
It's enlifted.me now.
Okay.
ENLIFTED.me.
Fantastic.
Is where that program is at.
I will link to it in the show notes. And I want to say, to me, that changed my life, and is what I see it is what I've learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I think is also a great avenue to getting to know oneself in a really deep way by learning the inner works of psychology, the cosmos, and by sitting in silence and doing the things, as Mike mentioned a bunch of times, just doing it rather than hearing about it from somebody else, is that there's a chain of effects coming from our thoughts into our words, into our choices, into our actions, and into our state of being. And that's why, one, I would say, operating out of fear is a detriment usually to life, and operating out of love. I know it's these are big words and big concepts, but really watching and having awareness of how we make choices. And if they come out of fear because I'm doing this because I hope not to be broke, or I hope this relationship ends, or whatever that is, that's operating out of fear. Operating out of love for oneself, others, kids, universe, etc. That's kind of the same, operating out of self-love, because we are that thing, as Mike mentioned earlier, of the whole circle of the internal, external, self, and collective. So operating out of love rather than out of fear. Taking a course on Enlifted.me about language, starting to speak a certain thing, and having the awareness of having solid language, of taking responsibility of our lives. I think it's huge, huge, huge way to know ourselves. And definitely when one is called to do work with plants are just teachers. And when one is called to do plant work and they feel good about everything that has to do with it, with the setting, their stability, emotionally, intellectually, however that is, they feel safe and secure in all those ways. I recommend that awakening to them. And everything else, this is just adding on top of Mike said. So I think that those are some good avenues, some good tools to continue learning about ourselves, especially if one is like, I don't know who I am. And I will say, you are not your thoughts. Keep that in mind, people. You are not your thoughts. This is a really important concept. And when one is like, but it's, like anger and resentment and starting to have all these thoughts, you are not your thoughts. And then you're going to ask, okay, so who am I? Well, that's a big question. Take a look. Let's, when we ended our business relationship, you were encouraging me to do sacred hunting with Mansell Denton. And actually, the way we started working together is that I just took your episode with Mansell Denton when he was working, I think it was Nutripedia, the nootropics encyclopedia that he made, website, the whole thing. And I actually talked to Mansell months before because I am interested in sacred hunting. I didn't come because at the time also when you were like, come in November, and I had a few month old in here and whatnot. If I'm not mistaken, you told me that you signed up to a few of them. You're like, I have a membership with Mansell. Does that mean that you, one, have been on a bunch of sacred hunting trips, two, that all of the meat that you're eating is meat that you hunted yourself?
Yeah, so I have been on 6 hunts with Monzel with sacred hunting. Yeah, I signed up to hunt with him for a year. It was training in some ways. And yeah, it's been a really beautiful experience. I'd say half the meat I've eaten in the last year has been something I've hunted. I realize I need to hunt more frequently if I want for it all to be my meat. So the meat I eat, half of it's I hunted, and the other half I go to the farmer who raised it themselves. And so I try to maintain as close contact with my food as possible, exchanging as few hands as possible. And also, I'm taking a group of combat vets hunting with Monzel here
Wow.
in a couple weeks.
So cool.
And yeah, so it's a really beautiful experience. I highly recommend it. It's in a world where so much of our work is done behind a screen and fingers on a keyboard, going out there and spending days in the bush and hunting your own animal and gutting your own animal and being able to put food on a plate and serve your friends and family off of your kill. There's nothing more to make you feel like a man. I'll tell you that. I love it. I love it. I love the feeling of providing in that way, because providing money and financially is one thing that can feel good, but it's so abstract in some ways. Whereas go out there and actually get the food yourself and witness and partake and sacrifice an animal yourself in order to eat. That's special.
Do you find the hunt itself and the gutting and all that to be a spiritual experience?
Yeah, the whole thing is a very spiritual experience. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, feel very connected to myself, very awareness raising of myself and in my environment and of the animals, and it's really special.
That's cool. It's still on my list to go with Manzel, and I hope to go on a trip with you just to share this experience. I started training with a bow 5 years ago. I put that aside after I got into other things and kids and whatnot. It's one of my top priorities. I do have a relationship with a farmer that is an hour and a half away from my home, and fortunately, his his family lives like 20 minutes away from me, so she brings the meat directly to me.
Nice.
And I got a beautiful stand-up freezer, and have a lot of reverence for meat, and I think that it's a beautiful experience in relationship. I like to see it as the gift that is going on, and the exchange that is going on is the animal is given their life, but then their consciousness merges with me, and then they get to have a podcast, and all kinds of other experiences through my body. So we're all merged together. Mike, thank you so much for the time. This was excellent, a lot of fun. Looking forward to future conversations. Is there
Thanks for having me.
would you like to share with the audience besides the links we talked about? With your fiance's organization, strongcoach.com, what other ways to connect with you?
Yeah, you can check me out at really Instagram is the best at Mike_Bledsoe. You can just hit me up and ask me what I got going on. Not what I'm posting or is always representative of all the different projects going on in the background, but that's the best place to just see what's going on.
Right on. Fantastic. Mike, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Bye, Yoni.
Well, lovely beings, I hope you enjoyed and were inspired by this conversation as much as I was. You can find the full show notes and all episodes on my website at yonihavana.com/podcast. If you are a man and you are called to do transformational work to become a better man, to find and grow the divinity within you, and you are longing a community of masculine men who share a passion for growth, please check out Men of Integrity by going to moi.community. Lastly, if you are enjoying the Yoni Havana podcast, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave us a rating and a review on your podcast app of choice. The Yoni Havana podcast is a brand new show, and your support would help reach new people by rating higher on the algorithms. Also, your feedback would help me deliver the best experience to you as the show keeps evolving. Much love and a big aho. See you on the next one.